Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are going to be looking at virtual lead generation, investment changes, and trends in response to COVID-19. My name is Elisa Sklar. I am the VP Marketing at GIS Planning, and I am so pleased to have with us today two guest presenters, Amber Hunter and Erika Magder from Research Consultants International FDI. Hello, Amber and Erika. I realize that I've told them to mute themselves, so they're probably...
Hi, thank you for...
We are delighted to have you here. And before I turn the baton over to you guys, I'm just going to run through some of the basics about how we run our webinars here at GIS Planning, and just have a few opening slides that I'd like to share. And then I will pass this over to Amber and Erika, who are going to talk about virtual lead generation and how things have changed in the context of the COVID-19 unfolding situation, pandemic that we're all dealing with. I also want to acknowledge, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy days. I know these are very challenging times to work in economic development. We appreciate all of the work you are doing for your communities, and I know that it is very challenging if you're working from home. There's small kids, pets, whatever else is going on in your lives. This does make things a little bit different than usual. So we are recording today's webinar. You will get an email tomorrow with a link to the video recording of this, so you feel free to share it with your colleagues or review at your convenience. And the other thing I just want to draw your attention to is that there is a questions panel in the GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We will be taking questions during today's session. I encourage you to put those in there, and we'll have a look at those at the end. Now, before I turn this over to Amber and Erika, I just want to say a couple things about what's been happening for us here at GIS Planning, because in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's become very clear to us that things have changed for economic developers, and while investment attraction is always going to be a primary objective, right now working with local businesses is absolutely critical. And so we've put together a few new tools and data layers that we've offered both clients and some to non-clients alike. So I'll take a couple minutes to talk about those. The first thing is, for our GIS Planning clients, we have included for free local data layers that allow them to send information in so that they can map essential services, businesses that are open or closed, COVID-19 testing centers, restaurants offering takeout, etc. Any data that they have, they can share with us, and we'll add them to Zoom Prospector and their intelligence components tools. The other thing that we've done is we've offered a free COVID-19 interactive data mapping tool for all US economic developers, chambers of commerce, levels of government. I know we have guests joining us from other countries, Canada and Europe. Unfortunately, we're limited a little bit about the data that we can get. If you have a data source for your country that we can use that's granular, we're happy to do that. Right now, we're able to provide this for free to all US economic developers. And it includes data from the New York Times, updated data every single day on COVID-19 cases, deaths. It's by county. It's also at the national level. And it includes the Shmura's Jobs EQ Job Loss Vulnerability Index. Just to show you a couple of examples of what these look like. This is an example from the city of Columbia, South Carolina, where they've added the COVID-19 business open for business or will reopen soon layer. You can click on any of the push pins. It'll show you the name of the business, whether it's open or not, sometimes if it offers delivery, etc. Another example here from Indian River in Florida. I think we have, maybe Helene is joining us. I thought this was fantastic, where they've been able to add chamber members and non-members who are participating, let them know what is open and what isn't. Fantastic way to support existing businesses. This is an example of the free data tool we are offering all US communities. It is a embeddable tool. On the link at the very bottom, you can navigate over there, grab some code, embed it anywhere on your website, and it is county level. You can drill down and look at the Job Loss Vulnerability Index. Information about that is in the link, or all of the New York Times data, which is updated daily. The other thing, and this is the very first glimpse we're giving to anyone about this, which is our brand new application that is going to be premiered on Monday. We're going to be launching it, and we're calling it Zoom Business. And what we're doing is we're allowing economic developers to let businesses go directly onto their site. It's a business listing tool. They can put themselves in the right category. Are they open? Are they shut? Are they offering delivery? Whatever those things are, so that the economic developers themselves don't have to constantly get this information. And then it allows you to map that information and let people navigate it directly on the site themselves. And we're calling it Zoom Business. I have a couple of other examples here. This is where businesses are allowed to go in and add their open business. It could be a COVID-19 testing site, put in their category and their address and any details, and it'll immediately get added onto that mapping service. So just a couple things that I wanted to say from the very beginning. We're very excited to be able to offer this information and these data tools to help economic developers respond to the challenges. The Zoom Business tool will be available in US and Canada. We're working on getting it to Europe as well. And so we're going to shift our thinking here from business retention, expansion, support, nurturing of businesses to talking about investment attraction. And to do that, I'm going to turn things over to Amber Hunter, who's the VP of Business Development for North America for Research Consultants International FDI. Hello, Amber.
Hi, Alyssa. Thank you for having us on today. We appreciate it.
We are delighted to have you, and we can see your screen, so you are good to go.
Okay, perfect. So first and foremost, we just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. As Alyssa mentioned, we know it's a really hectic time in our lives, and we do appreciate you having with us. We hope everyone is safe and healthy. But we did want to touch upon virtual lead generation and investment attraction. We understand that a lot of our clients in economic development solely focus on investment attraction, and so they want the wheel to keep turning, and we've seen that it has, and we've seen some declines. So we wanted to touch upon what the reality has looked like in the past 4 weeks and some predictions we have based on feedback that we've received. But we have to say that adapting to disruption in this case means that you can't just completely ignore or pretend the elephant in the room isn't there. So when we've been talking to our clients even strategizing of how we're going to now approach investment attraction, we said we have to tackle the issues head on. And so the first steps that we have said to a lot of economic developers, and it's been really outstanding to see the way that EDOs have been able to quickly address and adapt to this crisis. The first thing that we've always advocated for is to create that web page of information so that when your community logs on, they can quickly see that information. I put 2 examples here: Temple EDC, which is a region in Texas near Austin, as well as Ready Cincinnati, because they really have shown that quickly they adapted. With Temple, you sign in online and initially the box pops up right away and has all of the resources depending on even your sector. And this really helps because, as you have seen, misinformation right now is rampant. So we really need our community members to have a clear area with updated and true and accurate information. So that's the first step we've been advocating to our clients. Is obviously then we've been saying begin to participate if you can in business recovery response task forces. Create a mechanism, whether online or in any types of way that you can, to connect job seekers with any job openings that they have. We know that for the groceries and farmers, there are jobs that are out there. There are digital jobs. So we're just trying to help anyone that might have been laid off. Initially, we also want assistance programs for small businesses. We understand that typically small businesses in the community can account for 80% of the jobs in that area. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on not, letting go of that. And really that kind of drives me to a BR&E survey program that we've been assisting our clients with, because we found that a lot of our clients who wear the investment attraction hat are also now having to take over for BR&E. And that's purely because they're being completely inundated with requests from local companies that want more information. They want to know what resources are out there, what programs are out there. So we've conducted this program, but this is something you can do internally as well if you obviously have the manpower. Essentially what this program is that we've assisted with clients is we have begun to survey They're up to 200 local companies in their territory region. And we've had questions about, what is their current level of concern? Do they expect a drop in revenue or profits? Will they be able to keep companies? Are there layoffs? And then from that, we're assessing into a category whether their business is, at a critical level, after or at risk or stable. And we're aggregating that data and sending a report to our clients so that they can start strategizing for post-disaster, and they understand, what businesses have to be prioritized and what type of resources and programs and policies that they're going to have in response to that. So this is something we had to put together on the fly to sort of adapt. And it really came through because clients were calling us saying, we want to get back to investment attraction, but we just don't have the time right now. Is there any way, with the resources that you have that you can assist? And that's really how this came to fruition. If you want to learn a little bit more about what our survey questions look like, we have templates. Sometimes the client already has their own template, but we've drafted a lot. So if you'd like to learn more about this, please feel free to let me know and I can share some of those templates with you. So that being said, as we've said, investment attraction, it has continued. We have still been able to uncover leads. Executives are available. They want to talk. We've, aptly titled this a virtual lead generation program. And what we've been doing with clients is been sitting down and doing a market research report on their territory. I mean, something that's really been great is now that our clients can do virtual lead generation, they can widen the net of the markets that they are focusing on. So they're not just going to California, they're now looking at all of North America, all of Europe. So we're really sitting down with them and we're assessing what are their growth sectors, what are maybe some secondary sectors that they before didn't want to allocate resources to, but are now, interesting to start to look at. Then we create a database, using our CRMs as well as, a host of different websites to find companies that have indicators of growth. And we're also, of course, looking at industries that we believe are not being affected and are not on the decline due to COVID-19. My colleague Erika afterwards, she will discuss some of the trends we've been seeing there and, which industries were at this point giving some leeway to breathe. And then third is the virtual qualified meeting, which you can have via conference call, via Zoom, via presentation. So that kind of leads me to what is the best conference call service? I mean, if there's ever an industry that's booming right now, it's the companies that you see listed here. There are many services out there that we could all utilize, and these are just some that I'm familiar with that are sort of the best in the market and the most reliable and highly reviewed. For instance, there is Ring Central, which that's a cloud-based tele system. I know you can fax, text, audio conference, voicemail. There is a GoToMeeting, which for me is my personal favorite, mostly because I am the most familiarized with it. If you have a pro account, which is about $50 per month, you can have up to 250 participants on any given call. There's Uber Conference, there's Zoom. I mean, I think Zoom has now become maybe one of the most popular players in the conference call world, if you will, since this has come to fruition. I know they've become so popular now that they were having privacy issues. It was being called Zoom bombing, where people were coming into video conferences unattended, so much so that the Canada and the Taiwan government banned them for being used for their meetings. But as of, I think, 48 hours ago, Zoom has said that they've updated those privacy settings and there's a password. So everybody's adapting to as we kind of figure out this new normal. If you don't have a budget, then there's free conference call. This is a program that you can use. You can get international members. I mean, the only caveat is if someone calls in and says, welcome to your free conference call. So if you're, okay with that, then it's a perfectly good a system. There's WebEx Cisco, which I've heard great things about, and I'm actually very interested in utilizing myself. So if you have your system, you have your infrastructure, now you want to get ready to have, this virtual meeting, this call. What we really recommend and what we, keep telling our clients is have your package offers ready. Something I've been talking about with certain clients is if you have people on staff that are purely focused on investment attraction and they're not being used for B and R&E, right now would be a really great time to use that time to create an updated pitch decks, that are based on sectors, that are specific to different initiatives, to the incentives and services that you have. We say or advocate for that initial call when you get on with an investor. Your pitch deck should only be max 8 or 10 pages. You don't want to, inundate them with information. You want to get them in, but you really want to be an active listener on that initial call. If you use a third-party consultant such as us, you may already know what their project-specific requirements are because you would have had that data in a profile. So then really try to take the time to customize, your presentations based on that information that you have. I think what we're really seeing right now is that this is a tipping point where we're moving from the kind of old school presentation, which was, stark images, graphs without colors, whereas now the kind of visuals are playing almost in the biggest a part as it is for content. You want your images to be high quality. You want to have strong graphics. You want it to be visually pleasing, especially for that initial impression that you're making with your prospect. It shows that, you're current, you're up to date, you have your information ready, and you're prepared for that call. So if you have that time, we would really say invest it in getting those high quality photographs and, using your location maps and the data that's available to you, such as the programs that GIS planning can offer. Now, meeting books, I wanted to jump and discuss this because we're saying be prepared, invest your time for lead generation. And we wanted to kind of show you that it's still happening. Meetings are still being booked. When I say meetings, this is us demonstrating the data that's been utilized for our clients from all around the world who are asking us to find corporate expansion projects. If you look throughout the month of March, you'll see that we were still peaking on average here 40 meetings a week. The week of March 2nd, there was a small dip, but I think that can account for, the reality really setting in for a lot of economic developers. About 2 weeks prior to March, our firm was really kind of ahead in understanding that this impact was coming because we work so intimately with major events. We had already seen key trade shows in Europe being canceled or postponed, such as MIPIM in France and Hannover Messe. So when that started happening, it really started to give us a kind of wake-up call that this was, at least for me, real in a sense, that a way that I hadn't conceptualized before. And also, I think that the real turning point for North America was March 12th. I'm sure you all remember that was the day that the NBA said that they were canceling their season, and that really made a big turning point for a lot of Americans, especially in realizing what the new days would look for us. If you can see here, though, that being said, the U.S. is still the key market for where we're booking a lot of meetings. Canada follows closely behind. In Europe, we've shifted away from Italy and Spain as they've been the hardest hit countries from COVID-19. But the UK, the Nordics, they're still active markets, and there are still projects that are being discussed. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that in the U.S., the major players are still discussing. These executives are available, they're ready, they want to talk. We're still surprisingly having conversations in New York, but of course we've adapted our outreach. We're talking first on about we understand their situation, but let's talk about the future. So I think this is a great place to segue to Erika, because she's going to discuss some of the economic opportunities that we've been seeing and really dive into the feedback that we've been getting from, executives as we talk to them about future expansion projects. So thank you, everyone, and I'm going to pass it on to Erika now.
Great, thanks, Amber. And if there's any immediate questions, Alyssa, that while we switch over for Amber, we could take those now, or if not, I'll just dive right in to our the second half of the presentation. So just a reminder, go ahead.
No, I was just going to do the same reminder I think you were going to do. Absolutely. I don't see any questions specifically for Amber at the moment, but just a reminder to everyone that there is a place to put your questions in the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll take a look at those at the end.
Okay, great. So as Amber just mentioned, we are still talking to executives, and so the big part of what we want to talk about in the next half of this webinar is just what those executives are saying to us and what are some of the impacts that they're feeling around the world. Some of these may be, old a little bit to some of you on the call, but just to kind of review, as of January 2020, we did already start to feel a lot of impact from COVID-19, specifically out of China, as that was when Wuhan was initially locked down. Some of the major industries that were affected by that were industries that were severely dependent on China for their supply chain, such as the automotive, electronics, capital goods, and apparel sectors. So you could see here on the right on this chart that as of the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, imports from China dropped significantly into the US. And if you look at the purple line up there, you'll see that they were somewhat replaced by an increase of imports from other Asian countries. So we did see that companies were trying to already move around their supply chain so that they could get the goods needed to continue to produce and manufacture their products. Some specific examples in terms of supply chain that have been in the news include Lenovo announcing that it was going to increase outputs from other factories outside of China, including those in Mexico, India, Brazil, and the US. And so there's a concrete example of a company moving around their supply chain within probably about a month or 4 to 6 weeks time so that they could continue to manufacture their laptops. You'll see here that about 92% of laptops that are imported into the US were initially sourced from China in 2019. So that's an industry that was heavily reliant on China. And Lenovo, as well as many other companies in that sector, are looking at alternatives. And we do think that that's going to lead to an increase in manufacturing and assembly happening in North America and in Mexico, for example. Another example is obviously the textile industry. So major companies like Levi's, Adidas, H&M had to look at other markets outside of China as well, so that they could continue to source their goods and supply chain. So they had, they were hit very hard as well from the closure of China, as well as the U.S. Tariffs that have taken place there. So that's another industry that we're going to be watching over the next couple of months to see how they adapt to the changes that have happened across the globe. So while looking at, sort of some of the problems, we do want to highlight some of the opportunities. Again, we've been at this virtual lead generation for a little over a month now. So all of our employees do work remotely, and we have them on the phones all day speaking with executives. And we've highlighted about 5 different sectors that we think present an opportunity for our clients. As Amber mentioned, the clients that are doing investment attraction, where there's a lot of our clients that are really, that is their main focus. So some groups do BR&E and other groups don't. So those that are really involved in investment attraction are looking for ways to just stay ahead of the curve, and also to provide support to companies that are still having projects and want to get that information that they need. Certainly we're seeing, a lot of virtual meetings taking place. There's ways to even do virtual site selection. So the economic development agencies that are prepared, that have tools, electronic tools, some of the tools that Alyssa and her team provide are great, and they really help companies that are looking at different sites around the world prepare, especially now that they can't travel physically to those locations. So on that, definitely one of the opportunities is companies looking to adapt their supply chain. So in speaking with an example here that I put in blue is an automotive component manufacturer that we spoke with on March 25th, so that was just a couple of weeks ago, mentioned that definitely looking at mitigating their exposure to having only one manufacturing facility in China, and as a result are looking to diversify their production across Asia. So that's just one example, and that company was specifically looking at Asia, but we are also speaking with other companies in the manufacturing sector that are looking at the US and Europe and Canada to increase their manufacturing capabilities in those markets. Primarily because at this point they see the value, even if it's going to be a little more expensive, being close to the customer and being close to the market where they're going to be selling those goods has become increasingly important. Sorry, my slide is stuck. So the next opportunity is advanced manufacturing, and these would be specifically companies that are supplying the manufacturing sector that we just discussed. So we speak with a lot of companies that provide industrial automation, ways to automate the manufacturing production assembly floors out of Europe and North America, and those companies are definitely still expanding. They're having a lot of demand because a lot of the manufacturers are looking at working now with reduced labor force due to cost implications. So rather than spending money on the labor, they're looking to invest in some of these automation products. So a company that we spoke with on March 25th, mentioned that the U.S. is still an active market for them. This would be a European company, and they were still looking at setting up a local engineering, design, and industrial automation facility to support some of those increased requests that they're getting from companies in the U.S. market. Technology. So Amber touched on this a little bit. Companies that provide virtual conferencing are obviously, hearing an uptick in demand right now, but also companies that do robotic process automation. So again, a lot of companies have had to lay off staff members working with reduced staff. So anything that can be done, from an AI perspective, anything that they can use to help automate their business processes, whether that be HR, accounting, legal processes, those types of companies that can provide, cost-effective solutions are going to also see, an increase in demand. One example we've highlighted is an AI company out of Canada, and I continue to see, AI companies popping up on the list of companies that we're booking meetings with. Those companies are getting increased demand as companies are looking to automate their processes. So this company we spoke with in Canada on March 27th supports the private and public organizations dealing with natural hazards, and they were still, interested in looking at setting up a development center and sales operations in the U.S. within the next 6 to 12 months. MedTech and life sciences, this one's an obvious one for sure, but we do see that it's important for economic development groups that maybe don't traditionally target these sectors to look at ways that they could either work with the companies that are already in your market. So you might, have a lot of advanced manufacturing companies that are now adapting their processes in order to supply the medtech or life science sectors. And so that could be a new opportunity for growth, a new opportunity for your region as you come out of, this economic crisis and pandemic to grow a sector that maybe wasn't traditionally strong in your region. We do think that, the growth in the sector will outlast the pandemic. So it's not going to be just a small, blip where there's going to be increased demand. I do think that countries all around the world are definitely taking notice and needing to shore up their supplies for future. So these sectors we think will continue to grow for at least the next 2 years. So it's definitely a good opportunity if you don't already have your offer ready to work on that. And so an example again is a Canadian company in the 2D and 3D imaging space looking at setting up a manufacturing facility, creating at least 200 jobs in the US by mid-2022. So again, those companies are still looking at their projects, looking to see how they can work in the future, in the next 3 to 6 months, what's their next move going to be so that they can keep up with demand. One of the last opportunities is food production. So this one is, an up and down situation for sure. So we are a little more careful when contacting companies in this sector, but we do see that certain products are increasing in demand while others are dropping. Companies that supply restaurants are hurting quite a bit, but then companies that do packaged goods, such as pasta, cereal makers, they're needing to increase production. We also see that there are changing consumer habits and behaviors. So companies that provide packaging solutions that are innovative are also going to see some opportunities. So this is a sector, if your region is strong in, that we do suggest that you continue to pursue and potentially adapt the types of companies you're looking at. So here's an example of a pasta manufacturer in the US looking to set up distribution. It also highlights the point that companies are now looking at ways to make their distribution channels more efficient. So there's definitely going to be some opportunities for warehousing and distribution centers to be set up across North America, where previously companies may have only had one, let's say in the Midwest. They might be now looking at shoring up those facilities in the East Coast and West Coast so that they can have a more cost-effective and also efficient supply of their products to their customers. So, those were the main points that we had today. I'm going to put up this slide again so you can see who presented today. Please feel free to reach out to us if there's questions that you were not able to ask, and we'd be happy to discuss, your specific sectors, your specific region, and how, we see those conversations changing with executives. This was what we've seen in the last 4 weeks, but, things are constantly changing. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have questions.
Thank you so much, Erika and Amber. There's a lot to think about there. Some really interesting information about how lead generation continues, how supply chain shifts have changed the nature of the conversation and perhaps opened up new opportunities. I just want to remind everyone that you can add some questions in the questions field. I know we're at the top of our half an hour, but I am going to leave this open for some questions for those of you who are able to stick around. A reminder that we are recording the session, and so you'll get a link to that video tomorrow. So we do have a question on whether have you seen or do you anticipate businesses making a final decision or an expansion or relocation without an in-person site visit?
Go ahead, Amber.
Go ahead. I could actually talk to this because I have a client that I spoke with that had a project that he assumed was going to kind of stall, but they still wanted to proceed. So what they're doing is the staff is actually going in and filming the site for them and getting key players involved to then, once they show them the site, actually have all the key players of the site, so the building inspector, to talk on one big meeting. So people are still following the line of closing a project, and they're still open to it. And it is interesting to see how people have adapted. There are different ways out there that you can show sites. I know VR with Golden Shell was a thing. It seemed kind of sci-fi about 2 months ago when I talked about it, and now it's seeming not so out there. So yes, I think it's going to happen more and more in this new normal, and there are ways to tackle it.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Amber. Do you think companies are happy right now to hear from economic developers? I know some might feel a little bit worried about doing that sort of outreach, but how do you think the reception has been?
So, what we have this conversation with our clients is we've adapted the way that we do outreach from that initial stage to investors. And we're, first off, our first correspondence touches on the issue. We're not trying to make it the elephant in the room. We're saying, we understand these are unprecedented times. We hope that your safety and health and that your staff as well. We want to have these discussions because we know there are downtime, but we know that, business, we still want it to continue. We know that you have plans for growth. Do you want to, now that you have this time, have, the information gathering session to learn about the programs, the incentives, the labor that is available? And what we've seen is that CEOs, they appreciate that we're to the point about, okay, we realize that these are unprecedented times, but they also accept that, they actually have more downtime, more now than ever, and they are curious to learn about different ways that incentives can help them grow. And then they're also curious to know, are there kind of reactionary programs because of this pandemic that might affect, their movement, their supply chain, so that they want to learn more. So we've seen by tackling it and approaching it head on, it's really helped and fostered, that sense of kind of trust between us when we interview these investors.
Right, absolutely. Okay, that's very encouraging to hear. And do you have to have your pitch deck ready for a virtual meeting?
Okay, I'll answer this one and then I'll let Erika go. But
it's okay. I knew you wanted to answer that question, so I'm letting you have it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm the one who's very passionate about having beautiful, very concise and efficient pitch decks. I would advocate to clients that I think a pitch deck, the 8-pager I discussed, I think it is really important to have. If you have, the infrastructure and you have the ability to use a GoToMeeting or any of the technologies we talked about, it really shows that, you've put in the work, that you have your information concise. If it can be specific to the project details, that's even better. But, also understand and know your prospect. It can be on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes the CEO gives you a cell phone number. You want to understand what is their setup, and then you kind of adapt. I mean, at the end of the day, the initial calls, it's really you want the investor, the prospect, to do most of the talking anyway. So just kind of, play it by ear once you start to understand, what the prospect's infrastructure looks like and, what the project details are.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add in there is that, because we're talking about replacing what traditionally would happen in person with, a virtual meeting, I think it is important to be a little more prepared, because you don't have that ability to, let's say, see your prospect in front of you and see what they're reacting to. So, having that pitch deck ready, and also trying to put more images, maybe highlight a bit more about your community with pictures. If you have a video, you could send that out to them before. So you could also prepare them with some information ahead of the meeting, so that they already are familiar with who you are and where you come from. So a lot of our clients, and a lot of you on the phone, I'm sure, have these beautiful videos that highlight your region. So consider trying to send links to those as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I have a question also from Rick about where you can get more information about the Zoom Business Tool. We will be launching that most likely Monday. So we will be sending out blog posts, meetings. There'll be announcements on our social feeds, and I'm happy to keep your name and email address if you'd like me to include you in that mail out. So I think this brings us to the end of our questions here, unless Amber, if you have any other, Amber, Erika, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Nope, thank you. I think it was great questions, and we're just passionate about what we do. So if you have questions and want to talk about how our clients are working through this, and how we've adapted, please just feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to have those calls, and we're available more than ever. So we miss meeting you all in person at all the events that have been canceled, but are happy to connect any way we can.
Thank you. I just got another question in that's a super interesting question. Even though we've said our goodbyes, I wonder if you could take a look at this one. I heard on another call that businesses aren't as concerned or interested in incentives. What are your thoughts about that?
Interesting. I don't know that incentives is always, we've always traditionally told our clients that incentives is never, the one reason why a company is going to make a decision about an investment location. And I think that's still probably the case. They really do try to pick a location based on what makes sense for their business. In terms of labor is always a really important factor. Location, the availability of the type of site that they're looking at. So I don't know that that's actually changed as well. So I would think they want to know that they're going to have support, and they want to see that there's people in the region that are going to help them if they need help finding staff, finding labor, finding, availability of programs that they can take advantage of. But I still don't think incentives is the number one reason. And now more than ever, I think companies are trying to make the right decision about their business rather than taking money. So if you look at countries that traditionally offer a lot of incentives to get companies to go there, and then companies locate there, and then they realize that for whatever reason, it's not a good decision for their business, companies are now trying to be wiser, so they don't want to make a bad decision. So an incentive is not going to be the reason a company is going to move. I don't think now, and I think going forward, it's true, it might become even less important. It's an interesting perspective.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I've gotten some other people asking for information about Zoom Business. I will include your email addresses. Another really interesting question, actually. I'm going to give you guys this one too.
That's all right. We have nowhere to go. My 3-year-old's napping, so until she wakes up, we're good.
These are some really, really interesting questions. Okay, so do you think FDI inflows will cancel projects or just postpone due to COVID-19? the new norm will face companies with a new sourcing strategy compared to the panorama they had before? Interesting question.
Okay, sorry, I maybe didn't get that whole question. Could you rephrase that in a bit of a?
Sure. Yeah. I'll read it a little more slowly. Do you think FDI inflows will cancel projects or just postpone them due to COVID-19? The new norm for companies with a new sourcing strategy compared to what they had before. Like, how do you think this might shift projects that were planned prior to this outbreak?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and definitely something that we've talked to our clients about recently is that some companies are putting things on hold. So for the next couple of months, I do think there's going to be a slowdown in the number of projects that are being announced. Now, I don't think companies that were at the latest stages of their projects will necessarily slow down. As Amber pointed out, there are still companies doing site selection and companies announcing projects every day. But those that were kind of in the 6 to 12 month range are going to wait a little bit before making those final decisions just to see how things play out. So I think it depends on where the company is in their stage of project, and also on the urgency of how quickly they need to do their project from a supply chain standpoint. So, once companies are allowed to get back up and running, in Canada, things have been shut down here until May. In the US, I know that a lot of businesses are still able to be open. So companies that need to get supplies like textile, the big textile companies are going to need to keep going with manufacturing. So I do think those companies are actively going to look for supply chain opportunities right away. So medical companies as well are, shoring up their manufacturing. So I think it depends on the sector and it depends on the stage of the project and how urgent it is.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And a question from Surya on how could we attract investors without having industry clusters?
Okay.
So if they don't
perhaps,
have, there's a
yeah.
clarification. So they don't have specific med tech and life sciences clusters, one of the areas you discussed in terms of opportunity. Is it still possible to work in that direction to attract those investors, even though you don't already have an established cluster?
I mean, if I could just chime in on. Yeah, I was going to say, if you're in a position, and we do talk to some clients and prospects that say they don't have industry clusters or they can't distinguish what they are. And a lot of the times, if that's kind of the stage you're at, we say that I think the best step initially is to really sit down and do a kind of market research report strategy where we can go in and look at where your ecosystem is. We can understand, where the bulk of your industries are, what type of companies are there, and then really start to paint a picture for you. I always tell clients it's better sometimes to kind of walk before you run. So instead of jumping into an investment attraction, let's maybe kind of analyze, what's in your backyard and then come up with a strategy to pitch it or to tell a compelling story based on that data and the companies you have. So if that's the position you find yourself in, we can offer services to help you do those analyzings. Our partners can do it. We have so many partners that work in this kind of work. And I think the best thing is to really start to build a strategy that will lead you to then be able to execute, investment attraction.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate, there's so many great questions coming in. It says thank you, and I appreciate you guys sticking around to answer these questions. We will be sending out a link to the recording of this, and you will also have the contact information for Erika and Amber and as myself as well. So any additional questions, please feel free to respond to that email to link to them from there or to reach out with the contact information on your screen. I wish you all be safe and stay healthy, and thank you again for all the work you're doing for your communities. Erika and Amber, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thanks.
Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Take care. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.